Hello, passengers, and welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to San Francisco and the Pacific View retirement community. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember, happy hour starts at 3, dinner starts at 5, but in all reality, what is time when you're flying on TVPL?
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
Oh, it's so funny you say that. I've got an 8-week-old at home, so dinner is also at 5.
Max would fit right in. Rich, how are you doing, bud?
Well, it looks like we have a bit of a man on the inside of our podcast right now, Geoff. Why don't you? Who's joining us?
Yeah, well, boys, this week, as Rich alluded to, we are talking about Mike Schur's newest show, Man on the Inside, starring Ted Danson, which you can actually find on Netflix if you want to watch the show before you listen to us. But before we do so, it does appear that a mysterious but affable stranger has wandered into our cockpit, insisting that he is just here for Aviation Club and definitely not wearing any recording devices. Our guest this week is a writer, producer, and comedian who was a 2020 Sundance Episodic Lab Fellow. He co-created shows for television, has written for animation, and even developed for MTV and Funny or Die. You can also
Comedy Central.
Oh, and Comedy Central.
Got to throw that in there.
You can also find him hosting a pilot reading show at the Broadwater Plunge every month, as well as working on a virtual pilot writing class at the Pack Theater. Please welcome Andrew Kimler. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Thank you for bringing me into the cockpit. Are we still playing in the cockpit?
Yeah. Anytime you want to dive back into aviation metaphors, you're absolutely free to.
Cool. I didn't know we could do that post 9/11, so this is.
Oh shit.
Well, Andrew,
is that our first reference in 120 episodes?
To 9/11, not by a long shot.
Yeah, that's right.
Go back and listen to year 1 of this podcast.
I keep forgetting about 24.
Well, for folks who are here for the first time, or maybe here to listen to Andrew's wisdom, Max, do you mind telling folks a little bit more about what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes and all of their content wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, welcome aboard.
And Rich, what is your question of the week?
Well, personally, I'm super excited to have Andrew here because he was actually my teacher for that very same virtual pilot writing class.
You took a pirate class?
Yeah, from Geoff Kerbis. And I personally had a tremendous time. I learned so much. If you are looking to learn more about that type of writing or world building, or just learning from people who really love to do it, I highly recommend taking Andrew and his wife Keisha's class. It's virtual online at the PAC, so literally anyone can take it. And so
from like Russia. I'm not even kidding. We've had students from like all over the globe. So
that is so cool. Wow. All right. Well, if the FBI is now listening, because we've officially said that we are training Russian pilots, just know that it is strictly for TV writing purposes. And but Andrew, I wanted just let you wax a little bit on what makes a good pilot. I know that's a difficult thing. We've actually covered quite a few of the rules that we've talked about in your class on this podcast. We're applications for learning, man. Here it is. I just wanted to for everyone listening to know more about like what you find are the key pieces that make a great pilot.
That's a great question. I think every pilot, Keisha and I in our class, we always talk about like every pilot has its own thing, its own challenge that the writer or creators have to like figure out that makes it its special sauce. But in terms of, generally speaking, I found that some of the most important aspects of pilots are 100% it's characters. Mm-hmm. they don't have to be likable, but they have to be interesting characters and clear story. I think those are the two most important things. Without those, I feel like I've seen a lot of pilots that maybe could have been better that have been made it onto TV.
Mhm.
Where 9 times out of 10, I feel like those are the two things that are lacking.
It's always so interesting to see like a bad pilot come to be in the first place, because it always feels like, oh, you are walking over the dead bodies of 150 good pilots to get to even like to the point of like actually being made, let alone seen by anyone. It's so interesting that like things actually get out, and that's the whole reason we're doing this.
Yeah, even the bad shows. It's a fucking miracle. Even the bad shows,
Right.
It's so hard to make TV. Like that's why it's like bad's a relative term. I don't like to say bad, but it's whatever they had to go through to get that on the air. It was you gotta respect it. It's hard.
Yeah. Whenever Taylor Sheridan says no to anything or blinks or goes to the bathroom, that's the only time anything else gets made. So
it does really show the power of one yes, or just having one person in
Truly.
the room say like, oh, I connect with that, to then, as Rich alluded to, there's a many dead bodies that you're jumping over to be able to have your pilot potentially be seen by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in today's TV world. Well, Rich, thank you for that very thoughtful question. And Andrew, thank you so much for that perspective. Let's talk a little bit more about A Man on the Inside. But before we do so, a quick synopsis. Charles, a retired man, gets a new lease on life when he answers an ad from a private investigator and becomes a mole in a secret investigation in a nursing home. Well, I think that's a pretty apt description of what we are going to talk about today. But Max, do you mind telling folks a little bit more about how this show got made?
Yes, so today we are talking about the pilot of A Man on the Inside titled Tinker Tailor Older Spy, which originally aired on November 21st, 2024 on Netflix. It shares a birthday with Jeff and I.
Oh, amazing.
We're going to be talking about the show's creator, no stranger to TVPL, Mike Schur, a little bit. It's our third Mike Schur series today on TVPL, so please check out our coverage of The Good Place and Brooklyn Nine-Nine for more. From president of the Harvard Lampoon straight into SNL in 1998, Schur has spent a lifetime in comedy already. The origins of today's episode actually stem from a different project that never got off the ground. Schur and his production partner, Morgan Sackett, were developing a TV adaptation of Field of Dreams that never made it at Peacock. With the project stalled, the duo looking for a new direction, Sackett asked Schur if he was familiar with the 2020 documentary The Mole Agent, which told the tale of a Chilean man, 83-year-old widower Sergio, who took a job with a private eye firm to help investigate claims of mistreating in a nursing home in El Monte. The film had its world premiere at Sundance and was nominated for an Academy Award in 2021. In the documentary, he's ineffective as his 007 role, but the film's core themes of relationships, loss, and elderly treatment resonated with audiences. Sackett, from the jump, pitched Ted Danson in the leading role for a reunion between star and showrunner of The Good Place. Schur claims he responded to the email with a matter-of-fact, "Yes, you're correct. We should do that." End of email. Within 3 weeks, they had lunch with Danson, and he was committed to the project. To expand the film into series, Schur created the theft element to allow more room for clues and cliffhangers, and develop a true hero's journey for Charles, but remained adamant the documentary serve as the writer's room's North Star. In March of 23, the show was ordered to an 8-episode series at Netflix under the title A Classic Spy. The rest of the cast was announced in February of 24, and filming began around San Francisco and north of the city. In an unintentional coincidence, the name of the nursing home from the original documentary, the San Francisco Nursing Home.
Oh, that's fun. I also, boy, what a great choice to not make this about elder abuse and instead make it about because what a Brooklyn Nine-Nine choice to do.
Hold on, we've only watched the pilot. We've only watched the pilot.
Oh, that's right. So far, yes.
Well, every other episode, financial crimes.
Yeah, exactly. This is true financial espionage.
Black market drugs.
Oh my God. Well, Max, thank you so much for that little bit of background about the show. Let's talk a little bit more about this show. And we start off with some really nice table setting. as far as learning more about Charles, our protagonist, played by, as we already discussed, Ted Danson. And I would like the honest reaction from the three of you when you saw
Young Ted
Cheers,
Danson?
young Ted Danson, but none of the Cheers charm, just this like awkward version of young Ted Danson. Because for a second, I was like, am I watching an episode of Cheers I've never
Right.
seen before?
What's crazy to me is that they changed the color of his natural hair from Cheers, which, like, because you have hours and 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 seasons of footage of Ted Danson that age specifically, and you chose to make him look different. It's very funny.
Yeah. Ted Danson's like 76 now. Like, I'm not. This is not a pro AI podcast. This is not a pro like deepfake podcast. Like you could have just made, if you're gonna do the CGI de-aging, like you could have just made him look like Sam Malone. We know what he looked like at this age.
Truly.
Yeah, I had the same thought every time they de-age an actor. I'm like, we know what they look like. You're not. You're not. You're taking us out of it.
I do think it was really clever, though, the way that they did this, though, because one of the issues with de-aging that we have seen, and Marvel has made this very known, is if you do it in a improper lighting, it looks plasticky. It looks weird. And by having it in the vein of, oh, this is an old wedding video that's skipping around, and like it's been viewed so many times that we don't get a clear picture. For the minute that we got it, I thought that was a perfect amount to be like, oh, this was Ted Danson. Personally, I prefer 3 Men and a Baby Ted Danson, but that's me. But this is a TV podcast, so I understand the Cheers references.
We've done enough shows now on this podcast that we kind of pick up on when a line is repeated that you know it's significant. And the second time that Charles in the video said, "What do you say, Vic? Want to grow old with me?" my face dropped, and I let out this, "Oh no!"
Yeah, because I think of the three of us, Andrew, I am the only one that watched this series before we decided to do this, and I was like, "Hey, this is going to be funny. It's Mike Schur, it's Ted Danson. You are going to absolutely cry when you watch this show."
I didn't read the second part of your text.
Yeah.
So
you said, "Haha, Ted Danson, young."
Andrew, I'm curious from your perspective, because in my notes, what happens next is I say, what if Up was in real life and we got the Up montage without them being together, but only the aftermath of it? And I'm curious from your perspective, seeing that as our new introduction to Charles and his current life and maybe his bout with loneliness, do you think that's an effective way of introducing to our protagonist?
They made a lot of interesting choices, and I think this goes back to Mike Schur has just been doing this so long. He knows how to do this phenomenally well. He knows how to thread the needle and get us to care about a character right away and make them important and highlight the things that we need, platform the moments and the things that we need to know to understand the story. If you notice, we never see the wife in the wedding video.
Yes.
We never see her in the house. And so we cut from the video, we cut to him waking up in bed, and then you pull back, and the third shot of the whole show is him on one side of the bed and a big empty space on the other side. And that motif is repeated throughout the beginning montage. He's in his closet, half of the clothes are missing. And so you feel you don't see this woman, but you feel her absence through the entire episode.
Definitely. And it was like a combination of like, oh, we want this to feel a little bit like you said, feeling the absence immediately, but also it felt a little bit like we did not cast this person yet. It was very much like we did not have the actress in mind to play this role yet.
Let's get the show off the ground, and then we'll
even layering on top of that. So you have all the visual motifs. We're going to add in the auditory. We're going to play The Wind by Cat Stevens. If you just want to wreck someone, I was watching that movie Sing the other week, where the cartoon animals putting on a big musical vaudeville spectacular.
The prequel to Sing too.
They've got a gorilla who wants to be a pop star, which is different from the movie right now where a chimpanzee wants to be a pop star. and like they play.
Is that what Jim Crazy is about?
Yeah. They played "The Wind" by Cat Stevens to like show his father's disapproval. It's like this song just guts people. And then even the end of this cold open, we've gone through Charles Ted Danson going about his day in the life, and I realized we get to the end of this sequence. And he didn't speak out loud the entire day. Yeah. He went through an entire day in his life. And then I got upset all over again. I'm a wreck, and we are 90 seconds into this pilot. And I'm like, no. Last time we talked about Mike Schur, we had Andy Samberg going beep, borp, Zorp robot sounds. And I want the robot sounds back.
Well, Max, I'm really glad that you brought up at the end of this cold open, we sort of end like, once again, you ended with the reaction of, oh, I'm sad again because I just saw a man deal with this being alone. But this show does something very interesting is in that you'll notice there are a ton of comedians in something that starts very, very sad. And we get our first introduction to that with what is one of our cases, right? Why is Charles going to be brought into action? And we get that introduction from our PA, Julie, who is played by Lila Rich Creek. And then we see a very familiar face to those who watch or listen to TVPL in Mark Evan Jackson as Evan. And this is just such a great way of breaking up this pilot and giving us a little bit of a jolt of like, hey, it's not all sad. Like, here are two funny people making funnies so that you will want to watch more of this. What did you guys think of this? Were you intrigued at the concept of what our case was?
I'm always intrigued about Mark Evan Jackson. But also it felt like, because obviously we're going to get introduced to Stephanie Beatriz later, but it felt very much like, oh, we need to have, like, Mike Schur has his guys, he has his Brooklyn Nine-Nine guys, which is like that. It feels comforting, but also like, for as sad as the intro is, it's like it is a little bit of like okay, we know this is going to be funny at a certain point. it's going to happen quickly.
Well, I like just how hard the tone shift is too. The music changes. We put the typed out Chiron. We let you know as an audience, like, hey, we are aware we put a lot on your plate in the first 90 seconds. We're gonna take it down a notch now, and we're gonna do some silly espionage. I like that the book that Charles reads when he's sitting at home is it's a Jean Le Carre novel too, the British spy author. So that's kind of like a fun little Easter egg to like what the show's gonna be.
Did he write Tinker Tailor?
Yeah, he did Tinker Tailor.
Okay,
so again, the episode pilot title as well. And beyond the 9-9 crowd, we get Eugene Cordero playing his son-in-law as well. And I normally could separate the actor from the character in comedies, but I was like, damn, Pillboy RIP when I saw Eugene back up there.
That's so funny.
He's always a treat, yeah.
So, Andrew, one thing that I'm curious about is when it comes to building out characters in a pilot, you only have so much time, especially in a half an hour comedy. This is technically like, I think it's 30 minutes and 27 seconds this episode is. How do you think utilizing perspective to build character was like emphasized in this sort of pilot? Because we get that with Charles's daughter, Emily, who is played by, for those who are big fans of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Mary Elizabeth Ellis, in a small role, but it seems pretty important for this pilot.
Yeah, I think they did so many interesting. Again, this is Mike Schur. He did so many interesting things to get us to care about Ted Danson's character right off the bat. It was, you said earlier, like, he doesn't say anything that whole day. That whole opening sequence is all show, no tell. And it's the first real bit of dialogue you get post the home video is Mark Evan Jackson talking to Julie. We get their intro, and then Mary Elizabeth Ellis's character is fascinating to me. On the second watch, I caught a thing that I missed my first watch. We open with her being kind of upset about how lonely her dad is and how annoying he is trying to reach out and connect with her, while she herself is literally doing the exact same thing to her kids. and she has a huge blind spot on about it. And I thought that was such a fascinating read and a great way into who that character is. And it immediately made me interested in what her deal was.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it did feel like they were trying to set up for some like family trauma there, like just from that one interaction. It's like, oh, there is something a lot deeper than what you're experiencing, like between the two of them as on like isolated.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of this episode, because this is a premise pilot. So a lot of it felt like we're sowing all the seeds for things that we're going to unpack later on. Like, don't worry, we're going to get to it. But just so you know, these are all the conflicts that are going to be bubbling underneath.
Well,
Yeah.
Ted Danson uses Google Glass spy glasses is very funny. You can get a lot of mileage out of it, and this show does. But is Ted Danson fumbles his way through technology strong enough to build the foundation of an entire season on? Whereas we're throwing out so many things right now about human emotion, interaction, the passing of time, generational trauma, like all these things that don't feel like the building blocks of a sitcom, but are inherently more interesting deep down than old man use cell phone.
Sure. And you do get like I think you do get a bit of a contrast of like uh in addition to what is Ted Danson going to fill his time with, what is his purpose right now as an aging man, which knock on wood, we'll all have to experience at some point, and like of just understanding what our purpose is once we have bypassed like the capitalistic definition of it. But you also get a bit of, am I going to let this pattern continue of my daughter not really having a connection with my wife as she slips further into dementia? And is that going to continue with me? Like, is that now it's reaching out? Like, I mean, I've heard many stories now of people of a death in the family causing significantly increased like visibility and better relationships among the like surviving members of the family.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you bring that up, Rich, because Emily is almost pushing our protagonist closer towards what this show is about by
Yes.
giving her our why is this night different than every other night sort of thing in, hey, you need a hobby or you need a passion that isn't sending me clippings of my of your newspaper, which I actually like. Max, you said you were sad about that. My grandma actually used to send me clippings.
My grandma did too.
And I was like, oh my God, like I remember, like I love that so much. And I understand that it is one way of a love language of sorts. But Max, you referenced it a little bit. We get this transition from, hey, you have to figure out loneliness, to almost like this this spy thriller, this wacky spy thriller, right? Of watching Ted Danson discover his purpose. And I'm curious, from the three of you, did you enjoy this montage, this training montage of seeing Ted Danson go from lovable Ted Danson into lovable Ted Danson who's learning how to become a spy?
I mean, yeah. Sorry, Andrew.
Oh no, it's fine.
Oh,
It's the one part of the episode I didn't need. Like, it was fun. It's the fun and games of the
really?
episode. I can watch Ted Danson read a book. He's great. He's
Right.
nothing new. That's not hilarious. It felt to me like it was a bit of we're not dealing with a 22-minute episode. We're dealing with a true 30. And so there's a little more time to play in the playground that you set up. Like, we get to spend a little more time with Mary Elizabeth Ellis and Eugene Cordero and their family. We get to spend a little more time in the spyware, trying to figure out how to learn how to be a spy. We get that's the benefit of a true 30. But on the whole, I kind of I thought it muddled the pacing a little bit. I could have done without
interesting.
it. I could have done without it. But that
Interesting.
said, it was still fun.
Max, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think a little bit to Andrew's point, comparing it to The Good Place or 9-9 or Parks and Rec, there's an additional 8 or so minutes of time to fill in this. And so there are a lot of shiny objects in A Man on the Inside, along with the 3-part montage of tech training. Although I really do like the title cards for each training exercise. I like that we set up this sort of spy world with the visuals there. I do want to give a shout out to 2 character actors who have delightful supporting roles, Jimmy Walker Jr. and David Wells, who played the other 2 elderly gentlemen who are interviewing for the spy role. But It's a lot of shiny objects. They demolish their time on this set. They crush
Oh
these
yeah.
cameos in the interview. But we get essentially a large chunk of a second act that is chasing shiny objects between the two of them in their interviews, a little back down to earth with Ted Danson's interview, and the training montage. And it never goes too off the rails, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of gags. It's a lot of jokes. It's a lot of chasing that shiny thing for what feels like probably close to 10 minutes.
That's so
And
interesting.
it's interesting that you bring that up because as we see more of these streamers, right, go onto TV to fill winter slot time slots, right? This is the section that I literally have in my notes. I think we would never see this if it was on time TV. I think it would be written in as a joke instead of I can't
Little
believe you
cutaways.
bought all those peaches. And then, but it does leave us with one of my favorite jokes, these rule of three jokes that we saw, which is the clubs, right? Everything is a club. You
Right.
can't just be doing something. You are part of a club, and there doesn't seem to be anyone else who's a part of the club around you. Let's transition really quickly. And eventually, after our training montage and our trained up Ted Danson / Charles, we finally reach our retirement community. And we talked about Stephanie Beatriz being in this pilot as the head of the community, going by the name of Dee Dee. And I'm curious if there's almost this tone change when we go into the community. This pilot, I feel like, knows where it is going to be spending the most of its time on the show, and
Yeah.
it appears in this section. Did you guys notice that? And how did it affect your overall pilot viewing experience?
That for me was that part of the hero's journey circle of just the first refusal of the adventure, of just like, because I think, like, aside from the people who care for the elderly in a retirement community, a lot of people think that that is like some weird liminal space where, like, oh, no one's actually there, no one who people care about are actually there. It's like
Mhm.
completely untrue. Like, for a broader part of the US, like, that is where we get on hand, like, elderly care and stuff like that. And I think it was like almost watching a comedy where the protagonist sees his own death before he starts his adventure or something like that. Like, he saw a glimpse into the future that his wife never wanted, and the reason that his wife, like, made things more difficult for the entire family by not having the dementia care that she really needed. And yeah, Max, you look like you got something.
Well, what it really is it's a fascinating twist on a workplace comedy because we're going to spend the
Yeah.
majority of our time with an ensemble of people that we're going to get to know in one primary setting.
Hmm.
And it's really not that different from Schur's work on The Office, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's just we're not working. We live here, but it's the same rules. It's the same world building. And then we get Sally Struthers. We're talking all about the
Mhm.
Schur
Right.
alumni reunion happening, and he gets this legend of TV sitcoms in Gloria from All in the Family to take on this supporting role. And while I can't wait to get to know her, I also am like, what else is up your sleeve? Like, who else are we going to introduce? I'm
Yeah.
glad we don't spend too much time on getting to know our ensemble here, but it made me want to know, like, who else are in these wings, who's behind these doors, who's at bingo, who's at lunch, who's at game
Yes.
night, like, who are we going to get to know?
Yeah, this is a show that the premise kind of demands you have to have kind of a bigger cast than you would
Mhm.
typically see on a show like this.
Totally.
You know, you've got Ted Danson, you've got his family, you've got his kids, you've got the investigators he's working with, and then you have to introduce everybody who's going to be at the retirement center. Like, it's a lot of people, and I love how Shore just kind of takes his time walking through it all, so you don't get confused by everybody. You really get to learn who someone is before they introduce the next character.
It's almost like a Simpsons mentality of just like, oh, we don't have a person for that, we'll make one. That is,
Yeah.
it's or like, we just did Only Murders in the Building. It's like more and more guest stars nonstop. It's just like, and plus, like, I think at this point, who's going to say no to a Mike Schur or a Ted Danson project? You can get anyone from multiple generations to say yes to this.
So it brings us, after this tour, we get another sad moment, right? We get another moment that brings us back down as we're introduced to the concept of the neighborhood for folks who are dealing with age, mental progression related diseases. And we learn a little bit more about Charles. In my notes here, I have the show does a great job of using Julie to bring jokes when you are feeling down, because they instantaneously, after this hard conversation and after Charles initially realizes maybe this is too much, bring in the character of Julie to be like, no, dum-dums, like, this is a comedy, like, make sure we're walking fast, as Steve Martin says, we are walking fast in between scenes, and we need to make sure that we're keeping up that mentality so that you might want to watch a little bit more and be
It's
a little
funny
bit
you bring that up, Geoff, because I didn't think about it till you were saying it, but it almost is a dual fish out of water situation, because we have Ted Danson learning about the spy world through Charles, and then we have this character of Julie who's learning about, I don't know, the humanity world a little bit more, who's learning probably about what it means to have lived this life he has, and they're both, at the end of the day, they're both going to learn something from each other.
No, everything is Seinfeld. No learning, no hugging.
Oh my God.
That's how I like my TV.
Julie's almost playing a similar role that like Stephanie Beatriz played on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes.
Where like she's a little too hard-nosed, a little too into the job, and has to like learn to soften. Like, it's an interesting character archetype.
Definitely.
Well, that is this pilot. We find out that Charles is going to be taking on the job, maybe lying to his child along the process.
Oh, definitely lying to his child.
Joining a few other clubs probably along the way. I'd love to bring a little bit more shine to things that we loved, maybe things that we didn't talk about in too much depth, but you really enjoyed. And I'll kick us off just to give an example. One of the things that I like doing is I like being my own little Leonardo DiCaprio meme and pointing at the TV and being like, this is the chemistry read scene. This is when they like decided who was playing against Ted Danson. And that interview scene between Julie and Charles, where Ted Danson is pointing at the piece of art by Julie's niece and talking about how it's this cherished thing for him. And we get that callback.
Right.
Such beautiful writing. Such a great way of showing that Charles is a genuine person who does have these connections with his daughter, but maybe isn't able to express them as well as others. I'm
Geoff,
sure...
when you said the Leo meme, I thought you were going to say when Charles says a man
on the inside.
No, I have my moments. It's that, and I love when I see the person doing the monologue or from like their audition, where you're just like, oh, they know this, they're gonna nail it because they know what got them that job. Andrew, I'm curious from you, what were things about that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't give enough shine?
I think I kind of can't help but look at this pilot from the perspective of like what Mike Schur has done leading up to this, like going from The Good Place, which is a show about death, which is kind of big. This felt like a natural progression. Well, let's now talk what it is to age, especially in America. It is, it could have been treated like a wacky workplace sitcom, but he took the time to let it land emotionally when it needed to. He took the time to like let us care about these characters beyond a typical wacky workplace.
Yeah.
And give a level of respect to what that community is and how they exist. That blew me away.
Definitely.
Rich, what about yourself?
I know this is going to be controversial now, but for me, I wrote down the training montage was actually one of my favorite parts of the entire show. And you know what's so funny is that like seeing it from a efficiency standpoint with like a 22-minute like comedy sitcom, totally understand that. I do think that is one of the few moments that we get to see his personality beyond the grief aspect of it. And it is kind of like teeing up what type of jokes you're going to expect, like in the same way that Brooklyn Nine-Nine has a rhythm to it. Like that's how you figure out when the jokes are going to be. That's like the establishing music of it. This was the establishing music of the jokes for me. And I did it every single instance of his training felt like it was like a joke, and it felt like it was a sketch. And then also you get to see what do we talk about in class, Andrew? It's like you want to see people be good at their jobs in the pilot, and this is where you see Julie be exceptionally good at her job, and I think like that is that like montage cemented that for me.
Max, what about yourself?
I love bookending. I love visual framing. I love that the first time we see adult present day Charles and the first day of waking up in the nursing, the care facility, it's the same shot of him in the bed on his side with the other side left empty. It's just such a beautiful way to open and close and bookend this sitcom. And yeah, Mike Schur clearly knows how to establish visuals, and they really play to effect here.
Yeah, is that like a double size bed though? Is that like a twin XL bed? Because that was Ted Danson is big in that bed.
Ted Danson's also like, I think he's like 6'3" or something like that.
I think so too. Yeah,
he's a taller guy.
Tall people don't usually make it that long, so he's probably gonna be around a while.
Right.
He's a rare sight. Well,
I hope I'm not like 2 inches off of like dying young. I hope that's not what this conversation is right now. I hope it's not like if you're taller than 5'8", you are sprinting toward an early grave.
You must be this tall to die.
That's our pilot. That's the one that we've been writing. Let's talk about
no, tall girl already exists, Geoff.
Let's talk about wait a minute moments, things that might have caused you pause in this pilot. And as far as from my perspective, I loved everything about this pilot. The thing that caused me pause, I was looking at Charles's home that was immaculately decorated and I was just like, who was the designer? Who was the set designer during this entire show? Because I need to know everything about them. And I need more information. And Netflix, fuck you for flashing through the credits where I did not get to see who the set designer of this show was, because I want to give them a call and have them just design my own home. I'm curious. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh no, I was gonna say, the set design is a great testament to how well they understood Ted Danson's character, because he's a character who's like, he's meticulous, he's meticulous and enthusiastic, right? That's like why he gets into it all. But his home is immaculate. It's a great, he literally wears like a little like vest and tie while he's home alone. Like the way that the costume people and the set designers all all coordinated to really illustrate that character and show more than just tell.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Do any of y'all have any wait a minute moments or things that cause you pause?
Sorry.
I do have one, and it's one of those things where it's like Andrew's going to hear this and shake his head and be like, "You don't need to detail these things," but it's like we rush into him in Pacific View so fast, and I'm like, "Is his mail held? Are people taking care of his home? Like, it's like,
how come Jack Bauer never has to take a shit?
Is no one going to be like, why does Jack Bauer never have to take a shit?" But it's
I never see him eat. I never.
How long is he out of his home for? Are there things that need to be attended to? Like, are there obligations? We rush into this, and I'm aware that all I'm doing is telling here, Andrew. But I don't know. It concerned me.
It's temporary.
If you have an elderly neighbor who you don't see for possibly months on end, you may be concerned.
That is a very good point.
But also, that's also a great thing to seed for a future episode.
Oh yeah, that's right.
True.
Oh man on the Inside 2 coming out soon. I think for me, the only wait a minute moment, and maybe this is because I don't have any friends that have teenage kids yet, but the dialogue between the mom and the kids,
yes,
is like a little weird. It is very much like someone tried to like plug Easy A into a like an AI chatbot kind of thing, and it's like, how do angry teenagers talk to their parents? Like it was like, and this could have been, if you're 14, like maybe this could have been the most relatable part of the show, but yeah, I can't imagine calling my mom bro. That is absolutely insane.
Try it next time you see her.
Call your mom right now on the podcast.
All right, hold on.
We'll feed her in and just call her bro, and let's see what.
Yeah, put her on speaker.
Bro, you're on live right now.
Yeah, Andrew, do you have any wait a minute moments?
Mine are so stupid. I have one that's stupid.
There's
Nothing's too stupid for this podcast.
Probably, but like, this is a symptom of living in Los Angeles. Is I'm literally watching the show and going, I know that location. That's right down the street from me.
Yep.
So, and I'm like, they're not in San Francisco. They're clearly, they're right down the street. Like, that's the stuff that drives me nuts as a Los Angelian.
Yeah, it's New York looks an awful lot like Vancouver in the winter.
Yeah, I was like, you're not in San Francisco.
The exterior of Jerry Seinfeld's building is on New Hampshire, Koreatown.
That is true.
Well, we have one more question, and it is an in-flight question. And this week's question comes from Jessica in Brooklyn, who asks, we see Charles be a great fit for being a spy in a retirement community. What situation do you think you could seamlessly be a spy in? So I am asking you all, what situation, what scenario are you going to be ready to be a spy in your everyday life, or maybe slightly outside of your everyday life? Rich, look, I'm going to kick you off.
If the CIA ever needs someone to infiltrate Barstool Sports, I look like I would fit in a lot more than most. And I feel like I could get some really good intel that could put Dave Portnoy away for a long time. I can hold my own. I can take a joke. They'll probably question why I don't hate women as much as they do, but what's that?
Yeah. You'd happily move back to Chicago as well. So, like that's an easy win. You're just talking to people about Chicago and they're like, this guy's great.
Yeah. I know about pizza.
Max, what about yourself?
All right. Picture, if you will, a real life Barry situation. There's a murderer who's taken acting and improv classes around Los Angeles. Yeah. And they say, we need a regular dude who looks like he could blend in to a scene study class or an improv 1 class and just like be normal, make friends, get a little bit of dirt on this guy. I'm your guy. Yeah. I will infiltrate any of the acting or improv schools except the Pack in Los Angeles.
And except Groundlings, because you'd have to get out the wait list.
Oh my god.
And I will get your intel on your hitman.
I think we've gotten 2 great scenarios, but I want to hear yours as well as the pilot writer. What are you inserting yourself in? Make your spec script or your version of the man on the inside.
So as a girl dad, I'm officially, and having 2, I'm officially a girl dad. I think any of those daddy groups, anything where you have the playground, I can do disgusting things to people with a dirty diaper, but also
that's the clip. That's all we do.
That's going on social.
I have a really good penchant of getting kids to do the things that's best for them. Like I can I trick my daughter into getting her hair washed every night. I can convince a group of kids to tackle a guy if he needs to be brought down. Like I'm good with kids.
A real kindergarten cop scenario.
Yeah.
And collectively, we could all infiltrate Vampire Weekend's concert, Deep Cover, tomorrow.
Yeah, we dress the part.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and I was like, the obvious situation is I could very easily infiltrate a gym, a global gym of sports, where maybe a Russian oligarch is working out and they need me to see what he's talking about on the daily, maybe personal train him. But I came up with
Jeff, you and Max actually both picked Barry.
Yeah. I came up with the wacky scenario of I love going to various coffee shops and working out of them, and I am going to catch the person who steals the tip jars out of the coffee shops. Yes, I am going to go across the coffee shop and find that person and befriend them and then put them away. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your in-flight questions. We'll talk a little bit more about how to submit those at the end of the episode, but let's talk about a brief history of this show. So excuse me, let me restart that. Man on the Inside has one season and 8 episodes, but good news, everyone. In December of 2024, it was confirmed that this show will be getting a second season coming out in 2025.
Nice.
No spoilers.
That's a feat for Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. If it gets a third season, then they must know somebody. As far as notable accolades, I do want to note that this show was chosen by the American Film Institute as one of the top 10 TV shows of 2024, alongside shows like Abbott Elementary, The Bear, and Shogun. So I'm really excited to see what happens with this show in upcoming award seasons, because that is the list is super duper interesting. And I think that this show has some promise coming in its upcoming future. But
I think that Ted Danson fellow is going to go somewhere.
Yeah,
it's amazing, Jeff. You named the 4 hottest comedies of last year: Abbott Elementary, The Bear, A Man on the Inside, and Shogun.
I just can't stop laughing at Shogun. But yeah, that is the history of this show for now, as we see its future being written currently. But Rich, it is now time for your game of the week.
Yeah. All right. We got a little bit of Ted Danson trivia for you guys. All right. First question. Ted Danson was before discovering his dreams of being an actor. Ted was at one point a walk-on tryout at Stanford for what sport? Is it A, baseball, B, basketball, C, football, D, tennis?
I know this one.
Oh, Andrew knows it.
I actually know this one. It's baseball, and I know that because Sam Malone was originally supposed to be a football player, and they changed it to baseball because Ted Danson plays baseball.
See, I heard a different story that he went to Stanford and thought about trying out for the basketball team. In an interview, he did one with the Mythical organization and talked about that. But Max, what about you?
Max, tiebreak.
And I'm going to say tennis. He was actually in the cast of Challengers while at Stanford.
He was in that stand-in.
While Sam Malone was a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox very briefly, it was actually basketball is what he tried out for. Yeah, he was a star basketball player at a private high school in Connecticut before he moved out to go to Stanford.
And then he realized he was a star basketball player in Connecticut.
Yeah, big fish in a small pond. All right. And then our final question. Ted Danson became a regular on Curb Your Enthusiasm for this reason. A, he lost to Larry David in golf and owed him 10 grand, so they just decided to have him on instead. B, Larry David had an obsession with Ted Danson, even making several references to him in the run of Seinfeld leading up to the meeting. C, Ted Danson accidentally backed into Larry's car on a production lot and they started talking. Or D, Ted attended an early screening of Curb Your Enthusiasm and saw the audience hated it and offered to join it out of pity for his friend.
I hope it's the first one. I hope that Larry David,
the golf wager.
That Ted Danson owed Larry David 10 grand, and he was just like, "You could do this, and it's way more money." What about y'all?
I'm gonna say C. I'm gonna believe they hit his car. And it was a meet cute, and then they became friends, and then he was on a show.
Andrew, what about you?
This is a hard one. Just to be interesting, I'm gonna go with D. Because the idea that Ted Danson would take pity on someone and be on their sinking ship is just hilarious to me.
It's very
it's Curb, and it became like this 20-year show.
Right. Andrew, your intuition has proved correct. It was because he went to the early screening of Curb Your Enthusiasm, saw an incredibly tepid reaction to it, and said, "Hey, what if I join in?" Not that any of the other ones couldn't have happened. He might have backed into Larry David's car at some point, and Larry David did seem to have an obsession with him on Seinfeld, and does mention him several times. Like George compares himself to Ted Danson several times.
And maybe he played baseball at some point. We don't know
Maybe he
his
played
whole
baseball.
Well, I got that wrong. I thought I was so sure. I was so sure.
Sam Malone was really a red herring.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, Rich, thank you so much for your game of the week.
Oh yeah.
As this flight comes to a land, I have 2 questions for each of you. And the first is a question that I ask every week, which is based off of the pilot and the pilot alone. Would you consider watching more of A Man on the Inside? And then the second question, this show's already been greenlit for a second season. It seems like that is a rare thing happening these days. Do you think that there is room in TV for more of a show? Or I hate to say more of Mike Schur because it's like no shit, Jeff.
Mhm.
But more shows like this that might talk about material that we're uncomfortable with, but in a joking manner. And Max, I'm going to have you start us off.
Yeah, this is a definite yes for episode 2. This show really subverted my expectations. I did not know what to expect going into it, and it's such a great example of like it's about this, but it's really about this, and
Mhm.
the emotional highs and the shiny object highs really do balance each other out nicely. To your second question, do I want to see more of this? Jeff, senior citizens solving mysteries is so hot right now on TV.
It is true.
A Man on the Inside, Only Murders in the Building,
Matlock.
the Kathy Bates Matlock. Old people are also committing crimes. The June Squibb hit Thelma. Just look, the hottest thing in Hollywood right now is senior citizens. And yes, I am excited to see where this show continues to go with its arcs. And I do think there is room for veteran actors being able to take on really meaty roles
Mhm.
well beyond the time frame that this industry stereotype may think that they're out of the game. Hacks being another great example of it.
Yep.
If you got it, you got it.
Andrew, what about yourself? You brought us this
Um,
pilot, so I think we'd all be surprised if you said no.
I fucking hate
Fuck this.
I canceled my subscription. I burned my especially because this was a premise pilot, and it's so rare to see premise pilots these days. Like I feel like you have to see the second episode just to get a sense of what the week to week of the show is going to be. Like
Mhm.
there's so much setup. I'm like, all right, I want what is the is it mystery of the week? Is it how are we going to play this out?
What just for our listeners in general, not specifically for myself, what is a premise pilot?
Good question. Yeah, premise pilots are basically pilots that spend their runtime setting up what the show is rather than just kind of starting in the middle of things.
Got it. Okay. Very cool.
So they are a little out of favor right now. Like a lot of not too many studios are like keen on them, which is part of what's so surprising about this one being a premise pilot. But it is such a unique premise that you do need the runtime to kind of get into it.
Yeah. Is that how you would define like Severance, like the Severance pilot? That's also a premise pilot?
Yeah, I think so. Severance is a bit of an odd duck because it's also that's a show that was kind of designed to be like a wacky workplace show that became something much darker.
Yeah.
And with a longer runtime, I feel like it's more of like a premise. Half of it's a premise pilot, and then the other half is a bit week to week of like, no, we're going to learn the rules, but you're going to learn the mysteries.
Right. Peeling back the onion.
Just
Yes.
really quick to your definition, though, Andrew, I found this refreshing that it's a premise pilot, but it didn't feel like the first part of a 10-hour movie. It did feel self-contained.
Yeah.
It's very much like there's going to be an arc. We're telling you what the big case is, but it's not. And now we're just ending, and next week we pick the comedy back up. It did also feel like it had a true beginning, middle, and end. I could probably watch this episode on its own.
Yeah.
100%.
Definitely.
It tells its own story, and it's very enticing. I want to see more pilots that are about something. There's so much TV right now that's just it feels like paint by numbers, and it's people saying make a show about this and figure it out versus someone coming to the table and being like I'm really passionate about this idea, or I really have something I want to say. And I think this is the two shows we just talked about, Severance and Man on the Inside, are great examples of like, no, these creators like have something to say, and it's
Yeah,
part of why these shows stand out as being so good.
definitely.
Rich, what about yourself?
Oh boy. The first time I watched this pilot, I burned through that the entire season like I was speed running depression, and and it is so good, and I highly recommend watching more. I might watch it again right now because we did this pilot. If I was to try to throw away a cynical lens of just like, oh yeah, they're going to greenlight pilots that star the same like extremely trustworthy boomer actors that we've been seeing on TV for the last 50 years. Sure, this is not necessarily about, I would not say this is a show about senior citizens. I think it is a show for Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, about what they're about to experience with their parents.
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely like special. And I, had a grandmother who had a 10-year battle with dementia, and this like made me bawl my eyes out. And yeah, I mean, I think this is an accurate description of what it's like to have arguably the most important people in your life start to forget who they are and forget who you are. And it's like absolutely devastating. But I do think that's important. I do think we kind of live with a like veil of ignorance of like what happens as we age and what happens as we lose our vitality and or usefulness, I guess, if we're talking about in like a societal or capitalistic way, and like how we can like appreciate the lives of ourselves and for others. But yeah, so suffice to say, watch episode 2.
I'll be quick on whether I'd watch more. Yes, that's just super simple. The second question I think in order for us to feel as though we have progressed as people, we have to do things that make us uncomfortable.
Yep.
And this show talks about something that for a lot of people is uncomfortable: the concept of death, the concept of aging, the concept of loneliness. It is a theme that we also talked about with Always Murders in the Building. Right? Only murders. Excuse me.
No. There's always murders in that
building.
They're on season 5 of it.
That place is condemned.
That place is
Sting,
rough.
get out of there.
So, as well as Only Murders in the Building, loneliness is a gigantic theme and topic, and I am not going to name any specific shows, but if I see another trailer for insert doctor that has specific thing that only applies to them on Fox, I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind.
You don't want to see Dr. Sherlock for the 75th time?
All right, that might be the one exception. But as far as like more, I love creative choices. I wish this was a network TV show. There's a part of me, because it's just like, this is a piece of content and a topic that, yeah, it's not that cheery, but it would be really good to have like cooler, like water cooler conversations around this and around some of the jokes that we saw. But
it's also like, overall, it is a big paintbrush of optimism over this show. Like, it is not, 100%. It is,
it could be dark. It could,
yes.
Like, if you've ever watched the Villages documentary, Jesus Christ, that is rough. And I'm from,
is that the old folks home where they're all fucking each other? Okay.
Yeah, it's
okay.
But that is our flight, y'all. But before we leave, Andrew, first of all, thank you so much for
thank you.
joining us today, bringing your expertise and knowledge. It was a pleasure having
a visit from the master.
If folks want to hear more from you, hear more of your expertise, where can they find you?
I'm usually shouting on the street corner between.
That's you.
Yeah, that's me. I'm great.
I love your sandwich sign.
Yeah. Well, let's see. All social media is kind of a different kind of hellscape right now, so it's hard to pinpoint. I'm usually, if I'm anywhere, you can find me at as Andy.Kimmy on anything that I might be on. But also, check us out. My wife and I, Keisha Zoller, we teach a class over at the PAC, and we host a show at the Broadwater every Thursday night at 8, where we read somebody's first draft of a pilot to a live audience. It's a great time.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Rich, what about yourself?
Well, you can find me questioning my own life choices about being on social media. You can also find me on social media at Damn That's Rich on Instagram.
Max?
You could find me at Gardening Photography Painting Club and on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me in 20 minutes starting happy hour because it's going to be 3 o'clock. Why not? Let's have a party. I heard they're watering down the Chardonnay, though. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilot's License, you can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can see our smiling faces on YouTube, and you can find us on most social media platforms. If you have a question for the show, maybe an in-flight question, you can leave those at tvpilotslicense.com or give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for sneak previews of some of the stuff that we have coming up. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, you want to
I'll
join
take all the peaches.
You want to join our TV pilot watching club? Bye, y'all.